Hour number 2 of the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are live in Detroit for the 2024 NFL Draft. Don't forget, tonight, as part of our coverage, I will presumably be talking to the number 2 pick from the Commanders. That presumes that they do indeed stay put and pick, and it also presumes that it is either Jayden Daniels, who we all expect, or Drake Maye, because those guys are actually on site here in Detroit. I can't interview JJ McCarthy on site in Detroit because JJ McCarthy's not here. But presuming that it is Daniels tonight, I will talk to JJ coming up, Jayden tonight coming up after he gets through, obviously his television interviews and all that kind of stuff, makes his way to the media area, and I will have a chance to go one-on-one with the franchise quarterback of the future in Washington later on tonight. You'll hear that as part of our coverage, or you can see it on our YouTube page at Craig Hoffman or at the Team 980. But since I'm the man on the scene here, Anthony, I think we hit the fancy button because it's time for Not My Beat, and today it is my beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Now, I am here in Detroit, but before I left, I had one final chat with Logan Paulson about the quarterbacks. We've talked so much about them over the last 4 months, and we got to a point where we ran out of time. It was time to unleash the rankings upon the world and explain why we might not even follow our own rankings if we were Adam Peters. One final time via Take Command. Logan, me, quarterbacks. Here you go.
It's time. It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we made it. It is draft day. Thursday, April 25th. The first round of the NFL draft is tonight. And Logan Paulson, we know that the Commanders are basically on the clock. They have been on the clock. We know the Bears are taking Caleb Williams at 1. And thus it is time to empty the final pages of our quarterback notebook, make some predictions, do a should, will type of prediction here with the Commanders on the clock. Basically, again, they'll officially be on the clock later. It's worth mentioning, every single pick of the 2024 NFL Draft for the Commanders will be live on the Team 980, so make sure that you check it out there on your radio or on the free Odyssey app. But Logan, number 2, quarterback. This is kind of the definitiveness that everyone has been waiting for us for months, and we're finally going to give it to them because we're out of time and we don't have time to change our mind anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have more time to change my mind, probably a couple more times before we get there. This has just been such a unique process because, obviously, you and I have both watched a lot of film, and the film says one thing, then there's the kind of the other stuff, and then I find that it's so easy to get caught up in the national narrative regarding the quarterbacks. Really, it's so easy to get caught up with that stuff. And despite myself, I can't help it. I feel like the loser kid at school who's like, oh man, I think this guy's the best guy. And everyone's like, no, you're dumb. That's terrible. And it's like, well, I got to stick true to who I am. And I guess today is the time, is the time to kind of say our truth, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we're about to say the same truth. I'll be the human shield. I'll say it first. My final quarterback rankings go for top 4, Caleb Williams at 1, JJ McCarthy at 2, Jayden Daniels at 3, and Drake Maye at 4.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat, honestly. I think I'm in the same boat. And it's close for me. It's close for me between, obviously, I've said this before. I know people say, oh, there's this Caleb Williams, and then Jayden is right there, and then there's a space between everybody else. I kind of bunched those 3 guys together, at least in my rankings, because I think...
just to be clear, Caleb tier 1.
Yes.
He's clear number 1.
Yeah.
There's a gap
yes.
under him. Because, Caleb's in some way a monster creation of the other 3 guys.
Yeah.
In some ways, some of the things you'd point out as flaws in the other 3, you'd be like, nope, Caleb does that really well. So he's in a tier on his own. The other 3 guys, I can make an argument for any of the 3.
Right.
My personal preference would be JJ McCarthy for reasons that we'll explain.
Yeah, and I'm kind of in that same exact boat. And that doesn't, again, just to be clear, that doesn't mean that I don't like Jayden Daniels or I don't like Drake Maye or I don't see why they would be amazing pieces for this franchise. And if the franchise were to draft Jayden Daniels, I'm ecstatic. If they were to draft Drake Maye, I'm ecstatic. If they were to draft JJ, I'm ecstatic. They're all in the same tier, which means to me unlike Caleb, where there's less questions, there's just more questions. They all have questions, and I'm just okay, the most okay right now with JJ's questions. That's just my personal belief, right? And I can't stress that enough. I like those other guys a lot, but in terms of what I see from JJ, let's talk about him real quick. I see a guy who makes NFL throws with a consistency that the other guys don't. And now that's offensive scheme. So the projection of that philosophy is much, much easier. Oh, he didn't have to carry the team. He had to carry his team in a different way, right? You look at the 3rd and 7, everyone's talked about that. Those throws are elite. His ability to manipulate defenses underneath coverages with his eyes, understanding coverage at a high level, how to layer, how to drive throws, how to anticipate space, all that stuff, I love it at the highest level, right? Like that's what it is. I love his ability to run the quarterback design run stuff. Obviously, I don't think he's a great scrambler necessarily, but hey, we got to run a quarterback power. We got to run a zone read. He's got a great feel for that. So that's what I like about him. Am I still worried about his lack of total throw volume? 100%. Am I worried about his inability to, the fact they didn't ask him to carry the offense in a traditional way? 100%. Am I worried about his lack of variation in terms of throws? 100%. Am I worried that he kind of overstepped left? Yes. Am I worried that he only escapes to his right? Yes. Those are all concerns that I have, but I do feel like those concerns are correctable with experience and with time in a way that I'm not as confident with the other guys. So that's just my thought on that. And again, doesn't mean I don't like the other guys, but that's my thought on JJ.
So I'll just follow up quickly on JJ because you said everything pretty much right there. The only other thing I would add is the reason I feel more comfortable with his questions is because I feel like the answers are very right in front of us.
Correct.
That with the more experience, he would fix and figure out some of the other stuff. He's an excellent problem solver. And thus, when presented with some of these problems that he's going to have to solve in the NFL, I feel confident that he will figure it out. From the footwork stuff, which just is a work ethic and mental, application thing, to all right, yeah, he's got to layer throws better, but he hasn't been asked to do that as much, and he'll throw a pick and then be like, okay, guess I got to get a little more air under that. He's done it enough that he's capable, and I think that is the thing with JJ is he's capable of doing all the stuff that I want, and the thing that puts him over the top for me is he is elite mentally. And I'm not just talking about processing, all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the leadership and the thing that I can't get out of my head. The reason I will not believe, at this point, what are you going to do, right? 99% of everybody says it's Jayden Daniels. I'm not sitting here telling you they're going to draft JJ McCarthy, and I don't think you are either. We're just giving our personal rankings here, right? The reason I will hold out the 1% and be like, okay, it really is Jayden. And who, by the way, is also really elite as a dude. Yeah. But when you're talking about building a people-first, dude-centric organization in the way that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have talked about, JJ McCarthy fits that to a T. And that is the thing I can't get out of my head. Now, the talent and all of the football stuff that Jayden Daniels does that we're going to talk about in a second, and by the way, his work ethic and everything also fits that almost to a T. Right. It's just that JJ is so high level in that stuff, and he's so good as a quarterback that there's not the deficiency to be like, yeah, he's a great dude, but he can't. No, he can play. That's the thing I just can't get out of my head when it comes to Washington and JJ, and why I would want JJ. But the other two do not lack in any meaningful way in those categories, even if they're not A++ like JJ is.
I think that's the thing is this year especially. Usually something comes out, oh, this guy's got a weird personality quirk or foible that doesn't line up. I mean, everything I've heard about every one of these guys is that they're elite. JJ's leadership, his ability to kind of motivate people, highest of the high, right? Then you look at Jayden and his work ethic. I keep getting stories from people that I've talked to about his work ethic. I'm like, this guy's a robot. And I want that part of my program. I want that part of my organization. And then Drake Maye, the same type of thing. The competitive edge to him is something that I can't shake, right? They talk about how, hey, I got to be the first one to open up the door. Everything in his life, he's hyper competitive. And I love that. And so the fact you got 3 good dudes that are good at football at this spot that all have their question marks, right? I think makes this decision that much more challenging. And I was talking to one of my buddies the other day, a guy, one of my mentors, and he just was like, when it's this close, you got to go down to who's got that dog, who's got the competitive spirit and fire. And when I look at these guys, he's like, that's how you differentiate people. But I was like, I don't know them well enough to differentiate them, honestly. You know what I'm saying? I think that's why it's so tough.
You've heard stories about all of them having it. You might be looking at 3 dogs.
Right. And I like when I watch Jayden Daniels play, like his tape screams dog to me. And I know people talk about him taking these big shots. Like I see a guy versus Alabama who breaks 2 tackles and dives over the end line for a touchdown. Like that dude wants to win so bad, and got to have it situations 2 minutes before half. Like, like all of these moments, he's the guy that says, I'll make the play. And he's sitting in, he's taking hits versus Missouri versus unblocked pressure, delivering a dime to Malik Neighbors down the field. Like that gets you juiced. And I love that about him. And that's why to me, him and JJ are like so close, because that ability to make plays, that ability to like elevate the offense with your legs, like that's excellent. Like watching him versus Alabama, I don't want to say is all you need to see, because you got to watch him versus Missouri too, who's that's also an excellent defense, but he's elevating that roster. That's a good roster, making plays against some of the best defenses in college football. And it's the SEC. Like, dude's so impressive to watch. The thing that I cannot shake with him is just how simple the offense is. And it's not his fault, but it's like, how do you handle something that's more complicated and more layered? And with JJ, the offense is complicated and layered. With Jayden, it's not quite there yet.
That's the version of the question with JJ, where with JJ it's but his throw volume is so low.
Right.
With Jayden, it's like his throw volume's high, but damn, some of these are pretty easy reads and simple throws to dudes that are freaking ballers. Yeah. And so that's the question. Again, it's how comfortable are you with those questions, and how requisitely available are you to project the answers? And I think with Jayden, the calculation that the Commanders are apparently making is like, yeah, but he did it, and we're pretty sure that he can continue to get better. And I think that's where I've changed on Jayden, and why maybe I went Jayden, Drake, Jayden, kind of between those two and throughout the process, is the more you learn about Jayden, the more I think we've undersold his ceiling. Right. Because he's already good now. Like the gap is bigger for Drake between floor and ceiling. And it's also bigger on where they are now to ceiling. Jayden is maybe closer, but that doesn't diminish the height of his ceiling. And that's the thing with Jayden that I think I maybe undersold, because he was an older player, because he had the one good year, is like, no, he figured out how to do this, is kind of the selling point, right? And we'll find out in the league if that's true. But it's like he changed the way he trained, he changed the way he studied, and he had the best season of anybody in college football. If he can carry that and what he learned about himself into the NFL, this dude's going to continue to get better, and he's going to be really, really good and worth that number 2 pick.
And I think that's the other thing with him as compared to JJ is JJ, it's like relatively high ceiling, relatively high floor. I feel like Jayden's ceiling is higher, which I think is why if you're putting it all in, you say he's not only is he a safe swing, but he can be a big swing. And I think that's where like this narrative around him nationally is kind of coming to the forefront as him being the guy at number 2, because to your point, he's gotten so much better. Think about all the adversity he had to face over his career, right? He had the COVID year. He had like a kind of an exploding program at Arizona State. He gets to LSU, new coordinator this year, right? Like every year he's handled adversity, and he's still managed to develop and grow as a prospect and as a player. And so I think that's where Jayden's resume is almost impeccable. It's the offense, and it's not his fault. But I just have a really hard time looking at him running. Like I had a coach call me talking about how much he loved Brian Thomas Jr. And I was like, and we're talking. It's like the one problem I have with Brian Thomas Jr. is he only runs 5 to 7 routes the entire season. That's a very simplistic offense. And Cliff's offense, I think he'll understand how to speak to that skill set, but I'm just like, I get worried about that projection. But to your point, he's a guy that has gotten better at learning and processing each and every year. So why not be able to make this last jump? And I think that, that's to me a very informed, exciting argument as why Jayden should be the guy at number 2 too. So
Orlovsky was on the show with me the other day, and he said he's got the best eyes in the draft. And if that's true, then I think he's definitely the right pick. I think we're going to find that out, obviously, in the league. Just quickly on Drake, his floor has probably been undersold at this point. I think he's, because of his scrambling ability and some of the stuff that he can do, and he's a playmaker, he's a creator. Like he's gonna be able to survive in the league where people are like, he's got to sit for a year. I'm like, it probably benefits him. We talked about this the other day. But the thing with him and why he's 3rd of this 3 for me and 4 overall is because it's not about the height of the ceiling and the floor; it's the likelihood to actually get there. Right. And some of the flaws he has, really, I just have a hard time being like, yep, that's going to get better. And maybe he's next Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes where it does and it fixes. And you're like, damn, we missed on the next great one. But I think that is the thing for me. It's not that I don't see the ceiling and see why people like Nate Tice and Trevor Sikkema and really smart people who I like, Mina Kimes, like him. I don't know that he's actually going to reach that ceiling.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, I was talking to my producer, just a guy, Jason, on the Ticket to the Draft podcast, and he does a great job with his film evaluation, and we talk almost every day about the draft, kind of like you and I do, Craig. And the thing that came out to me, it's like he does at his best, he does everything that you want. Like, the reservation about Jayden is like, man, how well does he throw over the middle of the field? Like all this kind of stuff, which are totally relevant points. I don't have those same reservations with Drake. And I see the arm talent. I see the athletic ability. I see the creator, right? He's probably the best creator outside of Caleb Williams in this class. The one thing that I kept coming back to is ball placement, consistent accuracy, and overall consistency throwing the football. And I went back, I'm not kidding, and I would watch every throw that he missed, and I would watch it 5 times. And I cannot tell you from a mechanic standpoint why one is a miss and why one is a touchdown. And that is something where I'm like, if he doesn't know, and I don't know, and other people that I've talked to don't know, then where does the correction come? And that was the thing for me that I like, if I'm talking to good quarterback coaches and they're not like, oh, it's simply because of XYZ. And it's like, oh, well, that's great. Aaron Rodgers had all these corrections he needed to make. He made them, and now he's a baller. They don't see it either. And so that's the thing about him that gets me nervous, is like, if there's not a clear path to clean up these inconsistencies, then how am I certain that I can get the baller all the time? And that's the thing with him. And some people are probably perfectly fine with that level of inconsistency, assuming that it'll project and correct. I couldn't find anybody that gave me a good answer as to why it was happening. And as a result, my conservativeness just comes to the forefront there.
Yeah, I think that the argument for Drake against that is, unlike a guy like JJ, for instance, to take our top guy by slim margins here, JJ's been working private quarterback coaches since he's like 10 years old.
Yeah, right.
Drake hasn't. Drake is so raw at the position, and he's already this good.
Yeah.
Like, that's what scares the daylights out of you of not taking him.
Right.
It's like, dude's already this, and he's with a COVID year and everything that happened, like missed a senior year of high school because of COVID, and had a terrible offense and a changing coordinator and all this stuff at UNC, and he's still this good. Like, how do you pass on that?
Right.
But you look at the other. That's how. All right. Do we have time for quick? Yeah, I think we can squeeze this in real quick, like 30 seconds maybe on each of these. Do you have like floor ceiling comps for these guys at all? Because I've got a couple, especially even if we just do Jayden. I think he's really interesting considering he's likely the pick for Washington. I think that's what we're both predicting at this point. Because everyone talks about like Lamar or Robert or whatever. To me, like the floor for him is like Tyrod.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing floor, though. That's an amazing floor.
Right. It's like if he's the number 2 pick for Washington, if he turns into Tyrod Taylor, like that's not a good use of the number 2 pick. But like that is his floor. Like if he's Tyrod Taylor next year, that's incredible.
That's incredible.
Then what does he become?
Yeah.
And the ceiling is the one where I have trouble with him, where I'm like, I don't know that there's been a guy that's got like this calm and this everything, the quick release in the pocket that can also run like this. Like I don't know what the ceiling comparison is for him, but the Tyrod one is what I wanted to really run by you.
Gosh, I just had one. I forgot it. But yeah, I think that's if he's Tyrod Taylor year one, you're pretty happy about everything. I think, and I think people forget how good Tyrod Taylor was during his time in Buffalo in terms of protecting the football. That's another thing Daniels does so well. I think Tyrod was throwing close to 30 touchdowns. It was like 28 touchdowns, like 7 interceptions, like really being fastidious with the football. Now, he wasn't making all the plays he needed to make, and that's why they ended up moving on from him. But I do think like that type of production from him, it would be awesome. And in terms of ceiling, I don't know. It's such a unique player because of that ability. And again, if his eyes are as good as Orlovsky says, if his ability to see the middle of the field is as good as everyone says, we haven't seen it on film, but these are coming out of LSU, all these reports and stuff. I mean, like the sky's the limit. He could be an excellent football player. And I think that's ultimately why if I'm Adam, if I'm putting myself in Adam's shoes, as much as I like JJ, the ceiling for Jayden is there. And just like the ceiling is there for Drake Maye, the problem is the floor, right? The floor isn't Tyrod Taylor with him, and I think
the likelihood of reaching the ceiling.
Yeah, 100%. And again, that's not to say if they draft Drake Maye, I'm gonna be stoked. Like, I'm gonna be really excited because he can do a lot of really fun stuff. It's just like, if I had to make the pick, gun to my head, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, it's Jayden, which is what we did yesterday or 2 days ago in the mock draft. I'll close with this anecdote real quick. Mike Tirico was on the show yesterday, and he got to know Brian Kelly really well doing the Notre Dame games when Kelly was there. And he's checked in with Brian a couple times during the season. And basically, Mike was like, the way they talk about Jayden is the way that you want to talk about your franchise quarterback. Like the CEO, like he's that dude. And so that's why I feel great of what we think is going to happen tonight, which is that the Commanders will take Jayden Daniels, number 2 overall. Feel great about it. We'll have some live reaction afterwards, so make sure you're subscribed on YouTube at the Team 980 at 1067 The Fan. Might pop that one at Craig Hoffman as well. And then if you can't join us live, that'll be in the podcast feed tomorrow. For Logan, I'm Craig. We have officially survived draft season. Off we go into tonight. Thanks for watching this clip. All right, that is the final quarterback rankings from me and Logan. You heard him. We wound up in the same place. Not surprising, considering how much of the studying we do together. But ultimately, like, I think, value a lot of the same things: the decision making, the leadership, all that kind of stuff. Which is also why, though we understand, because those are such strengths with all 3 guys, that they could go in any direction, and certainly it could be the right pick for Washington tonight. There's a ton of rumors flying right now as we get closer and closer to the draft. Teams aggressively trying to move up. We'll see if Anthony has any more bold predictions. He ended the show with a couple yesterday I thought were interesting. Might be worth revisiting some of them, Anthony, as we've seen some of these rumors start to fly, and things certainly looks like there's going to be some movement in the top 10 tonight. So we can catch up on that before the end of the hour. Also, more of your calls next. How you feeling just about 3 hours before the Commanders are on the clock? 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Brian Mitchell, 6 o'clock as well. We're loaded up live from Detroit on the Team 980.
Kevin Sheehan.
It's the Hoffman Show. We are live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Anthony Haney, of course, back in our DC studio, running the ship. And how's everybody doing back in DC today? Like, you see more Commanders jerseys walking around? Anything? Can you tell it's draft day in DC? Oh, Anthony's now unzipping his very nice Nike hoodie, and he's got his burgundy and gold on. See that? Love that.
Everybody's, rocking their burgundy and gold in the building. I seen a Darryl Green jersey earlier today.
I mean,
Dares had on his Commanders jersey today. I got on my Commanders shirt today. I think everybody's excited you're here in the city.
Yeah, for sure. So I obviously flew out here this morning. By the way, I'm also working on a vlog, which does have a hilarious moment with B. Mitch in it that I will unleash on the world when I get back, because you're not done vlogging till you get home. I think those are the rules of a vlog. But I have definitely started editing it together, but I've been catching a bunch of behind the scenes stuff. But on the plane this morning, headed out here, there was a ton of jerseys. By the way, I mentioned the vlog because you could see the travel and the whole deal, how this all goes down, how we get here. But ultimately, Ant, we saw a bunch of different jerseys. It was funny. I sat next to a guy in Commanders gear on the plane, and I was like, this is the fun thing about being on radio. And as much as our radio show streams on YouTube and people watch the podcast on YouTube, it's no secret what I look like. And if you want to watch me do media stuff, it ain't that hard. But that guy next to me might listen to the show. Didn't say a word. I was kind of trying to sneak a look at. I was like, come on, be listening to Take Command. Be listening to our mock draft from yesterday. Be listening to the Hoffman Show podcast. Come on, guy. And if not, maybe I did a bad job with marketing. I should have elbowed him and been like, hey, dude, and just started a conversation about the pick. Be like, well, actually, I host a radio show. You should listen to it. So that's
walking around with the Team 980 hat.
Yeah. Well, I left it in the studio.
Yep.
Dang.
Right up there. Yep.
Yeah, but alas, there's definitely a lot of Commanders fans out here. There's definitely a lot of, there's a Seahawks fan on the plane. It's funny, a Seahawks fan wearing a West Virginia hat, and I was like, do you want Zach Frazier? Could be a pick for Seattle. They need a center, or could use an upgraded center. So it's a very cool scene. I will thank our bosses and everybody who put this on out here. Odyssey Sports and 97 won the ticket in Detroit. It's an awesome setup that we got out here. We're at a Buffalo Wild Wings. Earlier in the day, there was little chicken nugget tender things. I saw they've now busted out whole wings, and there's onion rings over there. So I'm very excited to eat dinner and then head over to the media center and be a part of our coverage tonight with Grant and Danny here on the Team 980. Of course, every pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, not just tonight, but all season or all weekend long for the Commanders, can be heard on the Team 980. All right, Ant, there are rumors flying again. Receivers seem to be driving a lot of this. Do you have more bold predictions for us for tonight? Or do you want to go into this quarterback rubric here?
I think I have one more, maybe two more bold predictions.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's get some bold predictions from you for sure. Okay. But we can also open the phone lines, and I'm open to bold predictions from the listeners as well. So here's what you do. You call 301-230-0980. That's, again, 301-230-0980 is the phone number. And you let me know what your bold prediction for the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft is. It can be Commanders adjacent. It doesn't have to be. But 301-230-0980 is the number. And let me get yours so that way you can get it on the air and then answer the phones when they ring.
Got you. So my latest bold prediction, Dak Prescott will be traded to the Minnesota Vikings.
No.
You don't like it?
There's two different avenues to look at this through. One is do I like the idea of that for Minnesota? I'd have to look closer at their cap. Probably not, though. Do they have $50 million of cap space hanging around?
They got a lot of cap.
Really?
The Vikings?
Minnesota's still got a ton of cap space.
They didn't re-sign Kirk. Running back isn't taking up a lot. I mean,
Well, part of the reason they didn't re-sign Kirk is because they don't have the cap space. Minnesota's got $16 million in cap space per over the cap.
So they
They probably are going to sign JJ to some kind of extension. Now that could bring his cap number down in year one. Sometimes that happens. He's getting $19 million this year.
That's a bad bold prediction.
It's a really bad bold prediction. Now, as an idea, like from a pure player standpoint,
I just don't think.
interesting. But also, like Jerry's stubborn as hell. He's not giving up Dak Prescott. He's going to be like, no, Dak's our quarterback, and we'll get him signed eventually.
I just don't think they're going to pay him though.
Maybe they won't.
That's part of the reason I thought he would get traded to the Vikings. Though the Vikings were going to be able to, they were going to miss out on JJ and just be desperate. So,
no. I like where your head's at in terms of desperation, but I don't think that's
okay.
I hate that. I think that's very much not going to be the case. Has anyone called yet? Are we relying?
Yes.
Okay, well, you want to answer the phones?
Yeah, we got one.
Oh, is there one? Oh, it's already up. I didn't have the thing in front of me. I never saw you answer the phone. I was looking up Minnesota's cap space. Let's go. Line one still good?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to Aveen in D.C. Aveen, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Craig? I actually feel like there's still a good chance we're taking Maye tonight. I feel like this is really mirroring the Trey Lance, Mac Jones situation, where everybody was saying it's Mac Jones, and Adam Schefter was adamant it was Mac Jones. And it's really funny to look at Daniel Jeremiah's blurb from his final mock draft on that, where he said, my gut's telling me Trey Lance, but all the signs are pointing to Mac Jones, so I'm going with Mac Jones. So I think there's that potential with Adam Peters' last organization being in San Francisco. And the reason I'm saying Drake Maye is because I feel like we're really trying to emulate the big analytics organizations, San Francisco, Baltimore, Philly, Cleveland. We took two top guys from two of those organizations. I think our picks are going to have an analytics bent to them. And it really seems to me the NFL analytics community really favors Drake Maye over over Jayden Daniels. And so I feel like all this narrative, like that the consensus in the league that it's clearly Jayden Daniels over Drake Maye, I feel like that's a lot of smoke. It's not reflected by public evaluators. It has to be closer than what they're saying it is. And I think also a lot of the narrative, there's been a lot of these lazy narratives that have gained traction, like Jayden Daniels is a better fit for Cliff Kingsbury's system. Washington wants to hit the ground running. That's why they signed all these older free agents, and Jayden Daniels gives them a better chance to do that. And I do think the Maye stuff has been like so overwhelmingly negative. And I think that gained some traction too. So
yeah, it's an interesting thought, and it's certainly a bold prediction at this point. But I would say, the night before the San Francisco draft, saying no, it's actually Trey Lance would have been bold as well. It's funny you mentioned the blurb from Jeremiah, because basically Jeremiah said verbatim the same exact thing about this draft. He's like, my gut says that it's Drake Maye, but everyone's saying it's Daniels, so I'm going to mock Daniels. Like, he said that almost verbatim on McAfee the other day, and as you mentioned, the same thing he said about Lance and Mac Jones back in the day. And if it winds up being Drake, and again, nobody knows anything because Adam Peters doesn't tell anybody, and that seems like a relevant data point. But if it winds up being Drake Maye, like, we're going to concuss ourselves face palming. Because for 2 years leading up to this draft process, it was Caleb Williams and Drake Maye. All the analytics and a lot of the evaluators that watched the tape during the season were like, Drake Maye, Caleb Williams. A lot of those folks, some of them even have those two pretty tight, and some of them have Maye over Williams. Now, do I think that is ultimately where it's going to be? I do not. And I can tell you why I think that Jayden Daniels is a great pick for Washington, but who knows? Maybe we could be in for a surprise. Let's go to Russell in Ashburn. Russell, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig. Really excited about the draft tonight. I've got a maybe not so bold prediction concerning the Niners.
Okay.
I don't think they hang on to both their receivers. Either Debo or Ayuk gets traded before the draft night is over tonight. Maybe for an early second-round pick to the Panthers. I don't think they can hold on to both and pay them both.
Ooh, that's interesting. Thanks so much for the call. I mean, there are rumors flying right now that they're willing to part with them for a top 10 pick. I don't know that they part ways with either Debo or Ayuk for it's the 33rd pick. So the Panthers have the first pick in the second round. That doesn't feel like enough for as good as those guys are if I'm San Francisco. It's probably like the people that do that would probably tell you that's the right value. But my thing with San Francisco would be like, don't you kind of want to go right now? Like, you're not getting better by taking another receiver who's younger at 33. You've already been through free agency. I don't know how you're replacing that guy. You could take, and who knows, maybe they see how the board falls. Maybe if A.D. Mitchell falls somehow into the second round, they're like, yeah, no, that's our guy. Brian Thomas Jr., there's a medical thing that's come up late that he's going to need surgery on his labrum in his shoulder, or maybe it's labrum in his hip. You have a labrum in both your shoulder and your hip. I forgot to check which one it is. He needs labrum surgery after the season. If it's in his shoulder, I'm a lot less scared than in his hip. Point is, he needs surgery after the year, but he can probably play through this year. And if that's the case, then maybe he falls to the second round, and they're like, yeah, no, Panthers, we'll trade you 33 for Ayuk straight up. Done. We'll take Brian Thomas Jr., bang, bang, works. But if I'm them, I know you don't want to pay him and you don't want to lose him for nothing, but you do want to try to win the Super Bowl this year. And he's really helpful. And if you get a top 10 pick, that's a different story. You get a top 10 in the second round pick, that's not nearly as helpful. More bold predictions from you next, 301-230-0980. Then speaking of bold, Brian Mitchell joins us at 6 o'clock on the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.